Now, if Andrew Tate now decided he didn't believe in Islam, didn't believe a word of it, he can't even come out and say it. They'll kill him.
Patrick David flew to the UK to sit down with Tommy Robinson to discuss the negative impact Islam has had on the UK and Christianity.
And it also attracts some idiots. Now, so National Front are a neo-Nazi sort of organisation, but we thought the groups like this may try and turn up. So we made it clear from the start, National Front not welcome. In our banners, in our first banners, we said, Nigerian Christians, we stand with you. Because the more I was learning, I looked, and that year, 5 Christian churches had been blown up on Christmas Day in Nigeria. Didn't even make our news. So I was looking at this jihad that was going on around the world, and I was going down a rabbit hole and understanding what it was and looking at all these things. Then it was like, we can't even protest about it. Like, you didn't stop them. And do you know what?
Why though? Why didn't they stop them?
They have never said no to the Islamic community.
Why though?
They're scared of them.
Why?
So there was Bradford, the riots in Bradford, I think, which were in 2001. There was mass riots in Bradford, and our government, our politicians, all of them are so scared of them.
Why?
Because of the violence.
It's crazy to think that this is a situation that we find ourselves in collectively right now, right? And across the globe. We've seen this happen in the States as well, where the attacks on Christians happening overseas were not covered by any of the major news outlets. It's almost like they intentionally skipped over it. They were trying to hide it, minimize it, to cover it up. The reason people found out that this was happening was because of social media and YouTubers covering it. Social media takes a lot of heat, and it is warranted, right? There's a lot of things that social media does, the companies as a whole, that aren't necessarily good. But at least they didn't censor this story when it came out. A lot of people are quick to throw out the G word, but when it was actually happening to Christians, it got real quiet. People have become so afraid to be labeled Islamophobes that they are afraid to offer any criticism or speak ill of Islam. This was the case with Richard Dawkins in his interview with Piers Morgan about a year ago. This was also the case with Alex O'Connor, who was supposed to come to the States to have a debate. He canceled the debate because his opponent was receiving death threats from Muslims. Alex has also pointed out how critiquing Islam carries with it a level of danger. So he wants to be careful with what he says. Can't blame him. I think what Tommy Robinson is saying here is slightly different. What he seems to be saying has more in common with what Ayaan Hirsi Ali was saying. Essentially, there are 2 different governments, 2 different laws operating within the UK. Laws for the Muslim community and laws for everybody else. I appreciate Patrick McDavid being persistent with his question as to why the police are scared. I think Tommy's answer should make all of us pause. This is something that is embedded within the ideology. This is something that is embedded within Islam. This is something that stems from the book. It comes from the book. It's impossible to separate this from the belief, because this is what the Prophet stood for.
But they don't know, because they're lied to, they're controlled continuously, which is why the biggest thing we have is free speech. But that's why
you don't have free speech.
That's why they attack
you. You don't have free speech. You just had a lady, Rob, if you can play this clip, Christian lady is praying silent prayers. I got 3 names here. Isabel Vaughn Spruce, a Christian pro-life volunteer, was arrested twice in Birmingham for silently praying near a abortion clinic. Adam Smith Connor, a military veteran, was convicted in October of last year for silently praying near an abortion clinic in Bournemouth, and he was fined £9,000. Livia Toshiki Bolt, in April of 2025, was convicted, this is last month, for standing near an abortion clinic in southern England, holding a sign that read, "Here to talk if you want." Despite the sign not referencing abortion or religious matters, she was found guilty of breaching the buffer zone and was ordered to pay £20,000. Here's the clip of one of them, Rob, if you can play it.
Are you protesting?
No.
Are you here to brave the lives of unborn fields?
As I've mentioned to one of your colleagues before, I think that's a little bit of a leading question. No, I'm not, actually, today.
Can the actions be carried out elsewhere?
I'm not doing any actions. I'm just simply thinking silently in my head.
Okay, and why have you chose to use location to stand?
This is an abortion centre. I'm praying for those who've been hurt by abortion.
So, Well, I said before, are you here to pray for the lives of unborn children?
Yes.
Say yeah.
I said no.
Did not.
I'm praying for those who've been hurt by abortion.
This is a shame. These people were basically arrested for praying and not praying out loud. It says that they were praying silently. They weren't screaming at people. They weren't drawing attention to themselves. They're sitting there. They're praying. The one lady with the sign, okay, she has a sign. She's not provoking anybody. What are we doing? This is what it looks like to call evil good and good evil. While this is not persecution to the degree of being physically injured, physically persecuted, like we see in other parts of the world, this is still a type of persecution. If you want to call it a milder persecution, that's fine. Yet, they were being treated differently because of their religious convictions. In essence, they were being persecuted, mistreated because of their belief in God, because of their profession of faith in Jesus Christ, because they believe that these unborn babies are also made in the image of God. She's not just there to pray for the lives of the unborn babies. We can assume that she is, but she's there to pray for the people who have been hurt. That includes the moms, right, that are coming here who are experiencing this. Some of them feel like that there's no way out. So I really do appreciate her tone and her approach in this situation. Now, for us as Christians, we shouldn't wait for things to get physical before speaking up. Don't wait for things to get worse. Address them now. Get ahead of it. I think this is why it's important for us as well to be championing these rights, right? These abilities that we have and utilizing them when we have them. We want to make sure that we're not breaking any laws, but we have to be willing to speak up and to take advantage of those rights that we do have.
And now, what are you? What do you believe in? Are you a Christian? Are you a Jew? What would you say? Do you believe in God?
Yeah, I'm a Christian.
You're a Christian.
I'm a Christian, yeah. I've been pushed more. So I used to say that I didn't believe. My mum was a Catholic, brought up. But then as I've seen the attacks on Christianity, and I've also seen the decay in British society, and the fall of Britain has come from the fall of belief. We have since we've stopped believing, and what built Great Britain? Christianity. What built everything about us, everything about our nation that everyone wants to come to it and make it a success was built on Christianity. Since that's descended, since it's been coming under attack, since people have left it, it's left a void. And that void's being filled. And if we want to understand and remember who we are, as part of our identity, I say to some people, even if you don't believe in Christianity, you don't have to believe in Jesus. That's what built us as a nation. That must be protected. That's part of our identity.
This is a great question by PBD. And I appreciate that he asked the question so directly. You see how Tommy Robinson responds? This is how we want Jordan Peterson to respond when he's asked these types of questions. What Tommy says here is consistent with what we see in history. The West, as we know it, was built on Christian principles. There is no modern West without Christianity. One of the major differences between the UK and America right now is that the void in the States was being filled by secularism. That is starting to change more recently. And we are seeing more of a shift towards Christianity, which is also happening in the UK. What Tommy is saying here is that this void is being filled by Islam because there's nothing there to really take hold of it. There does seem to be a pattern as far as cultural changes go, where something happens in the UK and then later on it kind of makes its way to the US. So this is something that we as Christians, as people here living in the States, need to be aware of. Now, a lot of his emphasis on how Christianity built Great Britain. It made Great Britain what it is today. This is something that Tom Holland highlights and emphasizes in his book, Dominion. He showcases how Christianity impacted every Western country. This idea of human rights, these freedoms that we value, that we cherish, all stem from Christianity. They're byproducts of the Christian faith. Without Christianity, there is no solid foundation for these things to stand on.
Clip that Sneeko was tired of the way of being a Muslim himself. I may be wrong, Rob, if you can look.
And he was having a go because they're always stressing him how he has to live his life, yeah? Because he doesn't believe any of it.
What do you think Tate's reasoning is? Because, you've known Tate,
Yep.
For his brother stays being a Christian, but Tate leaves when he goes to jail and he says, the people that wrote me letters were Muslims, but not a single Christian person wrote me a letter when I was Muslim. Have you spoken to him about it or no?
So I believe Christian leadership has failed us. But I believe there's a revival happening right now in Great Britain. I'm going to make a mini documentary on it. Something's happening. Something big is happening. We went to our demonstration, 100,000 people, and there was a lad, he had Christ is King banner, and the whole place was erupted. And then I looked as 100,000 people were chanting Christ is King in the middle of Trafalgar Square. This is unthinkable, unseen. Something's happening. When you have your loss of identity, loss of culture, and you feel at threat, people are looking back to where it's come from. But the church leadership are traitors to us, in many of them. We need masculine Christianity. I think when he used to make videos, and this is when he got deplatformed, and if he could do it again, he maybe think more careful about what he's saying. Yet there he is telling people and drawing people to Islam. Now, if Andrew Tate now decided he didn't believe in Islam, didn't believe a word of it, he can't even come out and say it. They'll kill him. He can't become the most famous apostate in the world. He'd be dead. They want him more than they want me.
You think that'd kill him?
100%. He'd be the biggest target. If he come out now and said Islam's a load of nonsense.
How come they haven't done anything to you? You were in jail and you were having 80 calls a day, 4 hours on the phone. You're doing all the stuff that you're doing while you're at jail. But there was a guy that was a lifer that was trying to put a hit on you to take you out, and you were there, 7 months. How come that didn't happen? A guy like you, as vocal as you are, how are you still around?
So I spent my entire 7 months on solitary confinement. I went into Wood Hill prison and left without seeing another prisoner. I was on my own.
7 months you went in, you didn't see a single person.
I was on my own. Totally. On my own. I don't want allowed to see anyone. When they brought me in.
But you know the article that I read that says a lifer was going to take you out.
So the prison used that life, I would be dead with it if I was put into the normal prison population.
This is a good question. When you consider everything that's been happening and the fact that Andrew Tate has spoken out against it, why does he still claim to hold to this ideology? Why does he still claim to believe Islam? Now, I wasn't aware that Sneeko had come out this publicly and more or less spoken against it, which is shocking. Well, it's shocking in the sense that it could potentially be dangerous. It's not shocking in the sense that he's flip-flopping. I mean, this is what he did before, so it's not all that surprising. Now, with Andrew Tate, does he really believe in this, right? Does he really believe Islam, or is this just a publicity stunt? Patrick McDavid asked Andrew Tate about this whole idea of maybe leaving Islam when he had him on his podcast. And Andrew Tate responded that he's not afraid. He's not afraid to leave. He doesn't think his life would be in danger. Now, that probably is the case. Andrew Tate is a professional kickboxer. I'm sure he can hold his own. But considering everything else, right, that we've seen, maybe he should be a little more concerned. I do think that if he were to leave, as Tommy Robinson says, he would be in potentially a lot of danger. He would be the #1 target, as he described. It is encouraging to hear that there is a revival taking place in the UK. And this isn't wishful thinking or just a matter of opinion. This is what the studies bear out. They've been covering this for a few months now. We see a revival happening over in the UK, and we're seeing a rise in Christianity here in the States. I do think that the percentage of people turning to Christianity in the UK is higher than what we're seeing here in the US. I also think it's encouraging to see that it's men who are leading the charge when it comes to embracing Christianity. For the longest, it was a lot of women who were, and there are still a lot of women within the church. But for a while, it just seemed like it was always women coming to church. That's starting to shift. You're seeing a lot more younger men going to church, right? Going to the Catholic Church, going to the Orthodox Church, going to the Protestant churches. All that being said, I would caution a little bit against this idea of muscular Christianity, depending on how it's being defined, because there's some issues with that view as well. Nancy Pearcey, in her book, The War on Toxic Masculinity, does a great job of showing some of the problems with muscular Christianity in the past. One example she mentions is with Billy Sunday. Did a lot of great things. He was one of those key figures when it came to the revival that occurred here in the US. It seems like Billy was more concerned with showing the strength and the power of Christianity and less willing to engage in the intellectual, reasoned discussion. When he was pressed in a public setting, he more or less just criticized and made fun of the guy asking the question. He tried to downplay it as some sort of effeminate Christianity, as if trying to think about things intellectually somehow makes you effeminate. Now, I'm paraphrasing and I'm taking some liberties here, so don't quote me on it. But I just want to make sure that when it comes to muscular Christianity, let's just proceed with caution here. Let's not get too caught up in that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.